Hi everyone, and welcome to War Thunder's Pages of History. This episode is dedicated to one of the most famous tanks of the Second World War, the American M4 Sherman. At the outset of the war, the US Army had no medium or heavy tanks at all. The only tank that it had was the light M2. The multi-turreted M3 soon followed, but failed to meet many requirements of the Department of Defense and was adopted only as a stopgap measure. To improve upon all these former attempts, the Army decided to develop a new tank in its place. The project took longer to complete than expected. The actual design phase for the new M4 began in February 1941, with the first prototype assembled only in September of the same year. The new Sherman inherited many parts from its predecessor, the M3, such as chassis, engine, the entire bottom part of the hull, and a 75mm M2 cannon. But the multi-turreted aspect was scrapped, which was a good decision since the classic tank setup simplified production and cut costs considerably. Finally, the primary task was complete. The new tank could go toe-to-toe with its primary opponent, the German Panzer IV, actually surpassing it in terms of defense. But the German engineers were not sitting idly by. As the M4 entered its first battle, they had to face the new Tigers. The Tiger, otherwise known as Panzerkampfwagen 6, was almost invulnerable to fire from Sherman. The only way the medium American tank could destroy the big cat was to attack it in a group from all sides and try and shoot the rear of the heavy German vehicle, preferably from as close as possible. The frontal armor was impenetrable, while the side armor was extremely hard to penetrate for the M4. The Sherman itself could be easily penetrated by the German's 88mm cannon from any side, angle, and range. That's why the crews nicknamed their tank Ronson, after a brand of lighters popular in the 40s, because it lights up the first time, every time. The US command analyzed this and made a decision that would determine the fate of the M4 for many years to come. The US Army decided not to develop a new replacement for Sherman, but to upgrade it. This is how T-23 turret with a 76mm cannon got installed on the M4. Soon, dozens of modifications followed. Pretty much every part of the tank was modified somehow, from its general construction to assembly methods, its power plant, and even its chassis. In other words, the M4 has become a go-to armored combat platform for the US. There was another common modification for the Sherman, the M4A3, with a carburetor engine and a 105mm howitzer. The most effective anti-tank modification of the Sherman line were two British-made modifications, the 2C and the 5C, better known as the Sherman Firefly. These were outfitted with the legendary 17-pounder cannon, which could penetrate pretty much every enemy it encountered using its powerful APCR shells. I bet many of you will also remember the Sherman Jumbos, or the M4A3E2 models. These were assault tanks with extra frontal armor and an up-armored turret. But let's not forget about the Calliope, the M4 modification with 60 high-explosive M8 rockets installed in a launcher rack above the turret. The launcher was aimed by aiming the turret's cannon. The launcher could also be raised and lowered by the gunner by moving the cannon up and down. The tank was basically an original M4 Sherman model with all its speed and armor, but with added extra punch of a rocket launcher. Yes, the Sherman might not have been the best tank of the war. It certainly wasn't the most powerful of them all, nor the fastest, or the best protected. But this tank was a universal machine and allowed the designers to create a stable platform for future experiments. The M4 chassis stayed a default standard for the US military for a long time after the World War II. The standard was used to build anything from the rocket-toting Calliope to tank destroyers such as the M10 and M36. Simplicity, reliability, and low cost meant more in a war than a large caliber, more armor, or anything else for that matter. Thank you for watching War Thunder's Pages of History. See you soon.